Hi, I'm Chauntez Dillet-Wilson, Assistant Director of Strategic Communications at the Disaster Risk Management Authority. Today, I'm answering your questions from Instagram, Facebook, and X about family emergency planning and evacuations. This is the DRM Authority's Ask the Experts. Our next question comes from @BahamaMama1989, who asks, how early should I include my kids in emergency planning? Well, the answer to that is as early as possible. Involving your kids helps to reduce their fear, build muscle memory, and empowers them to be a part of the disaster planning process. So even as a baby, you can be including them in your drills so that they can get used to what's going on in an emergency evacuation. As a toddler, you can start to include them in choosing items for their go bag, like their comfort items, for example. And you can be teaching them their full names, your full names, and all of the members of your family's full names, just in case they need to relay that information or get separated. As a young child, you can start to teach them the emergency contacts to memorize, and they can get more involved in building the go bag and the emergency kit. At this point, you can start to teach them what each of these items is used for and why it's important. As they get into their preteen age, you can start to include them in the planning process itself. And you can start to play games out of your drills, like who can get to the door faster and things like that. Or you can even include them in mapping out your evacuation route. And as a teen, they can start to take a leadership role. They can start helping to run the drills, and they can even be responsible for younger siblings or elderly family members. So at every age, there's a way that you can be incorporating your kids. That Russell Chick asks, what if I have a family member with disabilities or special needs? Well, you want your family emergency plan to cater to your family, so you should tailor it to do so. If you have someone in your family who has a special need or a disability or some kind of medical need, you should account for that in your plan. Ensure that your supply kit or your go kit have any special meds that they need or any medical aids like a hearing aid or a walking stick or anything like that they may need. You also want to ensure that the shelters that you're putting on your list can accommodate the needs of those that you're bringing with you. So for example, if you have someone who has a special need that impacts the way that they can move, you want to make sure you have a shelter that is accessible. And this year's shelter list does list the accessibility of our shelters. Or, for example, if someone has a communications issue, you want to make sure that you're taking into account that they have the tools that they need to communicate if they find themselves in the shelter and away from you. Lastly, you want to ensure that you're communicating with any local support groups that might be able to help you with mobility or otherwise. And of course, you want to make sure that you contact your doctor or your family medical provider so that they can give you advice on any special medical needs that you may need to address. Fran Dillett asks, what do I do with my pets? Can I take them to a shelter with me? Unfortunately, most emergency shelters in the Bahamas cannot accommodate pets. So when you evacuate, you'll have to make special provisions for them. But luckily, there are organizations like the Humane Society and some veterinary clinics that can accept them to board when there's a disaster. When you take them there, you want to make sure that you have a pet go bag with everything that they need. That's things like food and water for 7 days, a leash, a collar if they use them, any meds that they need, and of course some comfort items so that they aren't so afraid. You also want to make sure that you pack them in a crate so that they're safe if they use a crate. And you can find everything that you need to know about getting your pet ready for disaster at getready.gov.bs. Jasmine Therese asks, how can communities get together to assist each other in hurricane prep, especially to help those who can't help themselves? That is an excellent question. And when communities prepare together, they are stronger together. We recommend that you utilize your homeowners association, neighborhood watch, or neighborhood association. These are the best bases for getting community preparedness. However, if you don't have one, you can put together a group of neighbors and do this together still through a WhatsApp group or whatever is most convenient to you. Once you have your group, the next step is to know your community and know where its vulnerabilities or gaps are. Get together and identify who the vulnerable individuals are in your community who may need assistance, and then assign a buddy system. you want to make sure that every single vulnerability that you've identified is assigned to someone else in the community who can assist in that way. So if there's an elderly person who may need help putting up their shutters, you want to make sure that you pair them with someone who is capable to help in that way. Or if there is an area with overgrown trees that needs trimming, you want to make sure that you're also addressing that with an individual or a group who have the tools to address that as well. You can also address gaps by teaming up with local authorities or organizations that can assist. So for example, the Ministry of Works has a tree trimming program that you may be able to take advantage of. Or you can team up with service organizations or a local community church who might be able to lend manpower if you don't have enough in your community. Preparing an emergency plan is one of the most important things you can do to ensure that your loved ones are safe when disaster strikes. Whether it's a family plan or a community plan, for your two-legged loved ones or your four-legged loved ones, it can really go the distance to make sure to keep your family safe. So go to getready.gov.bs and check out the resources that we have there in putting together a family emergency plan. And don't forget to follow us on social media and start getting your family storm ready today. Don't wait. Thanks everybody. I'm Chauntez Dillet-Wilson, and this has been DRM Authorities Ask the Experts.